So let me just check for a second, Susanna, and just verify that you can hear before I proceed.
We can hear you fine, Sue. Thank you.
Okay, great. Before we move on to the minutes and the conflicts notification, I'd like to officially welcome our new CEO, Mike Cope. He's been with us for a period of time now, but Mike is our FirstNet new CEO. So Mike, welcome. I know it seems belated because you've been around for a couple of weeks, actually a couple of months now. But I wanted to officially welcome you to FirstNet since this is your first board meeting.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also like to welcome Ed Horowitz and Neil Cox as our new FirstNet board members. They were officially added to the FirstNet board on August the 20th, and I know that they've been busy getting up to speed, getting familiar with FirstNet. So Ed and Neil, if you're in the room, I'm not sure if you are, but welcome, and we'll of course see you at the different committee meetings today.
Yes, thank you. We're here. We're here. Thank you.
Great, great. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a roll call here for governance. So, Mr. Secretary, would you please take the roll for the governance committee?
Susan Swenson,
Here.
Barry Boniface,
Here.
Jeffrey Johnson,
Here.
Terry Takai.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Great. And I think before you, on the governance committee, you have minutes for the last meeting that I believe we had in June. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, modifications to those minutes?
None.
Hearing none. Did someone say something?
No hands in the air.
Okay, great. I'll take a motion to accept those minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Please, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Great. So the meetings are accepted. Uzama, could you make sure that those minutes are available to the public following this meeting?
We will.
Right. And then what we need to do, I think, Uzama, is do our normal potential conflicts notification. So if you could proceed with that for the governance committee, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Sue. In advance of FirstNet's October 2015 committee and board meetings, the management team has provided the board with an agenda outlining each of the items that will be discussed and decided during the committee and board meetings. The members were also provided with a conflicts of interest assessment, which was produced jointly by the Commerce Department's Office of General Counsel and FirstNet's Office of Chief Counsel. Providing these documents in advance to the board members allows them to identify potential conflicts of interest and to recuse themselves from participation if required. We will, prior to these committee meetings and the full board meeting, remind all board members of their obligations related to conflicts of interest and ask them to identify whether any recusals from deliberations or voting are necessary. In consideration of the joint meeting today, each member should consider his or her obligations with respect to the appropriate committee, and for some of you, that might mean both. Just to be clear, we are only doing one conflicts notification for both committee meetings. With that said, if any board members believe that they must now recuse themselves from either or both meetings, please state so for the record. Madam Chair, no one has a conflict that has been indicated.
Great. Thank you very much. I think do you want to review any further meeting logistics, Uzama, at this point?
The only new, you've mentioned that we're having joint sessions. We're going to take roles separately, but for the purposes of closing the meeting and adjourning the meeting, we're going to do that jointly. And with that, I think we're ready to proceed, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Uzama. I also would like to announce today and acknowledge that we have a new Finance Committee Chair. Governor Jim Douglas has graciously accepted responsibility of taking on the owner's responsibility of being the Finance Chair. So, Governor Douglas, we really appreciate you taking that on with your background, your government service, your finance experience. I think you're going to be able to provide incredible guidance to our financial efforts
thank you, Sue, for the opportunity. We've got a great team here, a great committee, and we look forward to continuing to refine our commitments in terms of FirstNet finances and doing what we can from our standpoint to move this project along. So I'm honored to do it.
Well, I appreciate it. Before you proceed with the finance portion of the meeting, I'd also like to take a moment to thank Tim Bryan, our former Finance Committee Chair and Board Member, for all of his efforts. You know, he was here at the inception of FirstNet, and I think he's done quite a bit to frame the way we look at our finances, how we report them. So I think he's laid a good foundation for you, Jim, and I think he's left it in pretty good shape for you to take over. But I'd like to acknowledge Tim's effort. And I want to provide an opportunity for any other board member to make any comments about Mr. Bryan. I'm sure Mr. Bonifaz probably has a few words about Tim.
Well, this is a big upgrade going to Jim Douglas, and we're delighted to have him in the seat, but we will miss Tim.
Anybody else have any comments? Chief Johnson, have you any comments? You've done a lot of work with Tim yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. It's always hard to top Barry. I'm not even going to try. Yeah, Tim will be missed. I mean, he brought, especially early, brought a lot of clarity to how we manage our money here. And Tim's supreme focus on making it right and making it rational really put us in the position we're in today, which is to have a good set of financials and a set that anyone from the private sector or public sector could look at and make some sense of. And Tim was great about holding our feet to the fire about what we actually thought we could achieve and making sure our budget matched that. So I know Tim's not out of our life completely, but he will definitely be missed as the chair. But we're very fortunate we have Governor Douglas and his set of skills to pick that up and continue to carry the flag. Thank you, Sue.
Great. Anybody else have any comments about Tim? I don't want to
Sue,
point anybody.
Sue, this is Terry Takai. I just also think it's important that we acknowledge, I mean, Tim had a great contribution to the Finance Committee, but I think we also need to recognize his contribution to the Governance Committee overall. I think in the early days, as we were going through, you know, many of the interviews and the selection process, and you know, some really difficult decisions around having the right people and the right leadership positions to get us kicked off. Tim was really instrumental in that entire process, and you know, he facilitated it, but again, just as in the Finance Committee, it provided us with just tremendous insights. And so, you know, I'd like to just make sure that we recognize his contribution there as well.
I appreciate that, Terry. I concur with your comments. Jim, I think Tim contributed in many, many ways and will be forever grateful, you know, for his contributions. And as Jeff said, he's not completely out of our life yet, or is very much out of our hair. So we'll look forward to continued contact with Tim and his insights. So with that, Governor Douglas, I think you're ready to assume your responsibilities as the Finance Chair at this portion of the meeting.
Well, thank you so much. I hope nice things like that will be said about me when my term expires. But it's been a privilege to know Tim over the last year, to work with him, and I know he's a phone call away if there's any question about the committee's efforts and responsibilities. I want to welcome a couple of new members of the committee. David Mader is the OMB designee who isn't with us this morning, I don't believe.
He's on the phone.
Oh, he is. Oh, I beg your pardon. We were, well, Dave, thanks for calling in. We're glad you're not shut down and can. And we were obviously worried about our logistics here, especially the cafeteria, if there were shut down. So thank you. And Ed Horowitz has joined the Finance Committee. And Ed, I look forward to working with you. Thanks for signing on.
Thank you very much.
We'll repeat the process more or less for the Finance Committee, but Zama, since you articulated the conflicts provisions and invited recusals, if any, I don't think we need to go through that again, but I invite you to call the roll.
James Douglas.
Here.
Susan Swenson.
Here.
Ed Reynolds.
Here.
David Mader.
Here.
Edward Horowitz.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Well, that's great. Well, we need to turn our attention to the minutes, and the committee's met twice. First, the last quarterly meeting in June, and secondly, a special meeting in August, which we considered and proposed the budget that was later approved by the full board a week or two later. Any questions about the minutes? Any concerns? Or is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ed. Brady was going to die for lack of second.
I read through them. I understand.
Any questions? If not, all in favor of approving both sets of minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Abstention? We've accepted them, and Secretary, welcome you to make these available to the public after our meeting as well.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Jim. As all of you know, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years really setting up the FirstNet organization from, the governance of the board to the structure of the organization. But one of the things that all good organizations have today is something called values. And this is a topic that Chief Johnson and I in particular have had for a period of time with President T.J. Kennedy. And so this is not something you want to rush into. You want to engage the organization in this process, because this is really what guides people every day in terms of what's important. So I think, TJ, if you could take us through where we are on the values, and just maybe you and Mike talk a little bit about how we're going to make sure that those values are really interspersed throughout the whole organization, and how we're going to live up to those, I think would be of great interest to not only the board, but the listening audience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will do. The core values have been something we've been working for a number of months with the team, and we really started at the ground level, talking to employees, talking to first-line supervisors, talking to the management team, and sitting down with discussions with Sue and Jeff and other input from the board to really make sure that we were focused on the things that were most important to our stakeholders and to us in creating a new organization. We have this unique opportunity with being a startup independent authority inside of the federal government and trying to do things in a different way with a very defined mission to serve our public safety stakeholders. And so with that, we wanted to make sure that the values that we as a management team, and certainly the entire organization, were thinking about and making decisions with in mind every single day, were focused on a core set of values that we could build into our performance plans, we could build it into our actions each day, and we could also build it into all of our recruiting efforts to make sure that as everyone comes on board and as we look at our actions each day, that they reflect on these core values. As part of that discussion, we had some additional values on our list that we looked at, but I want to go through where the organization as a whole came together for 6 core values that we think represent where we want to go as an organization, and want to have a conversation today with the Governance Committee and the Finance Committee for any other input on that, so that we can solidify this going forward as our key core values for the organization. And as Sue said, it's not something we've rushed into, it's something we've had a lot of discussions about, and I think it's really important. And so we'll just kind of walk through these this morning. So the 6 values that we came up with through those discussions, starting out with customer service, openness, entrepreneurial, reliability, innovative, and results-oriented. I'm going to kind of walk through these in a little more detail, and I think it's important as we looked at this that we also defined behind each one of these, what does this mean from a day-to-day perspective, because they're not just words. And for us, when we talked about customer service, we are serving a public safety constituency that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we need to make sure that our systems, our responsiveness meets the demands of public safety, and that we build that capability into all of our customer service elements across the organization, and that we're very responsive, and that we're responsive to having the kind of quick decision makings, resolutions of technical problems, collaboration across the organization to solve issues as they come up and respond to that. And so we wanted to put customer service front and center. We actually, a few months back, brought in Chief Johnson and met with the entire organization and talked for a few hours about his history and focus on customer service and what he's been able to do across organizations, and put that in the minds of firefighters as a terrific example. And we really had a great discussion as an organization with Chief Johnson about that and how important that is going forward. So we thought this was front and center for a key core value for FirstNet as an organization. Openness. As we've all talked about over the past 2 years, having that openness and transparency is a key element of our act. It's a key element of these public meetings and our discussions, and being able to share information freely and openly with our stakeholders, and to have that kind of two-way communication, both listening, taking in that consultation and that input, and much like we're doing today, where we share information not just in the meetings, but putting things online and making sure that we're distributing information freely and throughout both the public and our organization. We try to model this every single day with what we do inside the organization. We try to act in a very flat manner and communicate, and try to over-communicate in some cases, and share information across the entire organization on day-to-day activities. And so I think both of these really reflect what we're doing and where we want to continue to grow and focus on going forward. Entrepreneurial is something you probably don't hear day in and day out on government projects or in different agencies, but I think FirstNet is different. I think the startup culture and mentality has been something that we've modeled and tried to embrace as part of what we're doing. It keeps us focused on having more efficient ways than sometimes the bureaucracy that we can run into. But most importantly is finding ways to execute day in and day out and get things done as part of that, and to be willing to fail in small ways to be able to succeed in big ways. And I think it's important that we allow our team to come up with new ideas that are outside the box, and just have that overall spirit of being in that startup mentality and coming up with new ideas. And I think that can come from anywhere in the organization. And it's important for us in management and as a board and so forth to embrace those kind of good ideas and new ideas that come forward. And I think it's a key part of what we're doing. Reliability, committed to the mission, really being accountable for what we're doing, that public safety can count on FirstNet to deliver with them, for them, that we can be counted on when we deploy a network in the future as well, to be reliable, but that when people ask us to do things, we do what we say we are going to do. Innovative. A lot of what we've done over the past year in building the approach to partnering and getting offers to the table is trying to look at ways through an objective-based procurement that allows innovative ideas to come through that, and to not be overly prescriptive in some cases, and to pursue the solutions and the outcomes that we're looking for in creative ways. And I think that's very important in what we're doing in FirstNet, because it hasn't been done exactly this way before. It's something that we have to look at and embrace new ideas and new approaches to it. And so trying to be innovative in all that we're doing, and in the future, how applications and the technology will be able to ensure public safety can be effective and more efficient is also critical. And lastly is results-oriented. I think you've heard Chair Swenson certainly talk about this. We are measuring ourselves and our team on our results. We're being honest with ourselves when we miss targets, and we're rewarding good success and producing results that are high quality and on time and on budget. And these are the kinds of things that we want to emulate every day throughout the organization, and really focus on the teamwork to get the performance that we're looking for. So went over these fairly quickly. Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, and we can't state it enough, the customer-driven focus is where we're at. This organization and the organizational alignment is evolving. You know, as everyone knows, it started very tactical. It had to, with 1 or 2 employees, 3, 4, 5. So it is getting completely ingrained into the organization and all the decisions that we make. You know, so we focus on our alignment, better customer interactions. We've made a lot of progress over the last 2 years, but we're not satisfied. And I can already tell with the organization and the teams, they're very focused on getting to that end mission for the customers, and that they stay customer-driven. So this is the core values. It's actually displayed all over our offices, and it just should resonate as kind of a watermark in all the decisions that we make. So it's very exciting. I appreciate what TJ and Chief Johnson and everyone's done to this point. It is a grounds-up thing. It isn't something that TJ and I just drew up on a board and said, this is what it is. The organization came up with this and believes it and is trying to, you know, execute to that in every decision that they make. So I think this is a great start, but we're not done.
Just a question, comment, I guess. First, I want to thank Sue for being, one of the first people to focus on the most important part here, which is we do need an entrepreneurial culture. Said another way, and you try not to be offensive when you say this, but we need a non-federal culture. That's what we need. We need a culture that finds solutions and innovates and focuses on the customer and remembers that we're serving people that need it now, and when they need it, it matters. And that's not the kind of world where you can wait 2 weeks for toner and fill out 9 pieces of paper and pack it around a building. This is a right now, let's get it done deal. And we don't mean our emphasis on innovation and being entrepreneurial. We don't mean that to bother or offend anybody. It's not who's your employer, it's how you act in your employment. And that's a choice each of us gets to make. And we just don't want to lose that. I know the cops, firefighters, and paramedics on the street, they need that and expect it from us. And I want to congratulate the staff for putting this down in a format that we can see and something that's easy to follow and remember every day. So thank you.
I also want to thank Sue, her leadership and talking through this and really keeping the focus. One of the great things for each one of these core values is you can take almost any decision or any action every day and really reflect back on, are we meeting them? And it really gives a very easy way for the team to be looking at that, for the leadership team to be looking at that, and for all of us to stay very focused. So it's been an excellent series of discussions and an exercise, and it's one that I think will pay dividends 24 hours a day going forward.
TJ, can I just add to Chief Johnson's comment, if I could?
Sure.
I appreciate all the work that you and the rest of the team have done on this. I think this becomes a foundation, and I think the employees who work at FirstNet can hold each other and the leadership accountable to these values. It's something that we'll continue to check in on to see how we're doing. I also think from a leadership standpoint, as people look to progress in the organization, I think these are the values that we'll be looking for. So it's not just about what you do, but this is more about how you do it. And I think these are going to be some important components that will, I think, to really be real and not just words on a piece of paper. People are going to have to see them woven throughout the entire organization and everything that we do. So I think the good work has been started, and I think the real work begins now to make sure this isn't just not words on a piece of paper. So thanks for that. I think we have a good foundation to build on. So I appreciate all the work. And TJ, you were central to that, and I know you and I had lots of discussions and went back and forth, so I appreciate your patience on the topic.
No, it's been actually rewarding from a perspective that this may not sound like it's a hard exercise, but I think it really is to have very meaningful values that are something that the team can really utilize on a day in and day out basis in both strategic and tactical decisions. And I think it's been good.
Any other comments from any of the other board members? I know you've all had experience with this kind of work, probably in the things that you do. Any words of wisdom for the management team on this topic?
Got a thumbs up from Governor Douglas over there.
Okay, all right. Let's move on then to rules of conduct. Another foundational item we have, Natasha Coates with us today, is one of our attorney advisors, and she's going to take us through the rules of conduct. And this is not only for the employees of FirstNet, but just for the board members who are present today. I think it's important to understand this applies to all of us as well. And I think it's you also have some documents for board members to sign once the presentation has been done, assuming that they are concur with these rules of conduct. Is that correct?
Yes, they'll be signing them today.
Okay, great. So Natasha, do you want to take it from here?
I do, Sue, and thank you. And good morning to everyone. I'm excited to speak to you today about FirstNet's recently implemented Rules of Conduct document. I think I'm having some issues with, okay. So I think TJ's presentation really was an excellent segue into this topic, because both endeavors really do share some commonalities, and they're very important to our organization and what we stand for. To help place things into perspective, I wanted to begin with a timeline of how we arrived to the rules of conduct. And so in the spring of 2014, FirstNet's Senior Management Compliance Committee developed a plan for implementing a number of policies and procedures, which included this rules of conduct document that we're talking about today. And so fast forward to exactly a year later, in the U.S. Government Accountability Office, or the GAO, they issued a report on FirstNet's internal controls. And in the report, the GAO urged FirstNet to move forward with implementing the rules of conduct as soon as possible. And so today, I'm pleased to report that that document is in place, and all FirstNet staff have been trained on the rules of conduct. Now that you have a general understanding of the timeline, I want to delve more into the substance of the GAO's report, and then ultimately, I'll delve into the content of the rules themselves. So as I mentioned, the GAO issued its report on FirstNet's internal controls this past spring, April 28th to be exact. And in its report, the GAO acknowledged that FirstNet had done a lot in the way of internal controls. They specifically acknowledged that we'd implemented a number of policies and procedures. They specifically cited to the board timekeeping policy and the travel policy that I know all of you are so very familiar with. But what they also urged us to do again was to move forward with implementing this rules of conduct document for a number of reasons, but primarily because having that document in place really does put staff on notice with respect to their ethical and behavioral conduct obligations. And so this past summer, as I mentioned, the Compliance Committee did implement its rules of conduct document. And the document itself is a very cohesive and comprehensive guide to all FirstNet staff with respect to their ethical and behavioral conduct obligations, which is exactly in line with the GAO recommended, and which is exactly in line with the plan that the Compliance Committee had in place stemming back to the spring of 2014. So now turning to the rules themselves. Really, the key theme in the rules of conduct is that because FirstNet is a federal entity in the federal government, its federal personnel are subject to all applicable laws, regulations, policies, and so forth on ethical behavior and conduct. And when I'm referring to the term federal personnel, as Sue said, these rules really do apply to all levels of federal staff at FirstNet. So our board members, our senior management team, supervisors, and again, all levels of federal staff. At FirstNet, federal personnel are subject to federal ethical statutes. To give you an example, 5 U.S.C. 7353 establishes the gift rules for federal employees. We're also subject to ethical conduct regulations. As another example, 5 CFR Part 2635. Those regulations lay out the standards of ethical conduct for employees in the executive branch. We're also subject to executive orders on conduct. As an example, Executive Order number 12731 lays out 14 principles of ethical conduct that apply to government officers and employees in the federal government. And of course, at FirstNet, we're subject to our own policies, and so the board timekeeping policy that I just referenced and the travel policy, those are examples. And finally, at FirstNet, we are subject to Department of Commerce and NTIA policies as applicable. And so to give you an example, many of us use IT resources on a day-to-day basis to conduct our official duties. And so when we're using those resources, we are subject to the Department of Commerce's IT rules of behavior, which basically lays out the acceptable uses of IT resources in the Department of Commerce. Now, given just the sheer scope of requirements that we're subject to, I've laid out here statutes, regulations, executive orders. It's a lot. And so when the Compliance Committee was putting together these rules of conduct, they really wanted to keep it simple. They wanted to facilitate compliance. And so one of the tools that they implemented was, in the document itself, several of the authorities that I've just named, and many others, are actually explicitly referenced in the document. And so if you happen to be viewing an electronic copy of the document, you can easily click on the hyperlink, and that will direct you straight to the authority. So you can read up on that and learn the obligation. Another tool that the Compliance Committee implemented to, again, facilitate compliance was they developed 7 tenets, as we like to call them, that basically just summarize the overarching ethical and behavioral conduct requirements. The first tenet is conflict of interest avoidance. And what that essentially means is that at FirstNet, we avoid any actual or apparent conflicts between our own personal interests and the interests of the agency. And so to give you an example, one of the ways that we do this is that we file our financial disclosure reports on time with the Ethics, Law, and Programs Division so that that office has an opportunity to examine our personal financial situation and evaluate that against the interests of FirstNet. The second of the 7 tenets is opportunities for everyone. And what that means is that at FirstNet, we do not discriminate against anyone on the basis of age, race, gender, and so forth. To do so is not only illegal, but again, it's absolutely counter to what we stand for as an agency. The third of the 7 tenets is notifying investigative officials when appropriate. And so what that means is that we promptly report allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, and other forms of wrongdoing to the appropriate authorities. And should an investigation flow from those allegations, we participate fully in the investigation. Disclosure of information is the 4th tenet, and this one is key here at FirstNet. What that means is that in FirstNet, we do not disclose information that we are not authorized to disclose to individuals who we are not authorized to disclose it to. And so to give you an example, at FirstNet, many of us, just like employees across the entire federal government, may have occasion to work with source selection sensitive information or sensitive personally identifiable information, or PII. We've been trained on how to handle that information, and we know the disclosure rules that apply to those types of information. The 5th tenet is use of resources, and in short, that just means that we are responsible stewards of government and environmental resources. And while I could give several examples here, I'll give one just with respect to being responsible stewards of government resources. So many of us, the board included, we may have access to government travel credit cards or government purchase cards. Again, we understand the rules that apply to using those cards, and we understand that our expenditures and our purchases always need to be authorized. I tend to just read the last 2 tenets together, and they are customer service and teamwork. And when read together, they essentially stand for the principle that at FirstNet, as TJ just said, we work together as a team to meet the needs of our internal customers and the public safety community. And I have to say, that's really a concept that Chief Johnson and Sue have absolutely been advocates of during their many discussions with FirstNet staff with respect to putting the customer's needs first. And so before I turn to the last slide, I'm sure that you all can tell that the very first letter of each of the tenets comes together to spell the word conduct. And again, that's just another tool that the Compliance Committee used to facilitate compliance and to keep it simple. So in summary, the rules of conduct, bottom line, why are they important? The rules are important because, again, they put federal staff on notice with respect to their ethical and behavioral conduct obligations. And by staff adhering to those rules, They gain not only the trust of the public, but again, the trust of the public safety community and our internal customers. And what that does is it essentially allows us to focus on executing this critical and very important mission that we have ahead of us. This concludes my presentation. Do you have any comments for me?
Any comments by the board or management in the room?
So I have one. I have one question, Natasha. The IG's report, one of your earlier slides mentioned that we need to develop standards, which you've done, and evaluate performance against them. And I guess my question is, how do we ensure that we comply with that part of the report, the compliance part?
That is an excellent question. And so when FirstNet Management evaluates their staff, they can evaluate their staff by evaluating how they've complied with laws, regulations, policies, and the rules of conduct would just be one example of a document that the management team can use to ensure that their staff have complied with their responsibilities.
Yep. Hi, this is Jason for those on the phone. I just wanted to add, and I wanted to thank Natasha for all her hard work in putting this together, but if the board remembers, you know, I think it was almost a year ago, back in December, where we provided one of the initial briefings on FirstNet's approach to compliance and the compliance program, and really wanting to establish a culture of compliance. And I really see these standards of conduct, rules of conduct, dovetailing so nicely with TJ's presentation and the core values. And as you can see, one of the core values is actually repeated in the standards of conduct because it is so important, the customer service element of this. And our goal has always been to establish an absolute culture of integrity beyond reproach. It is part of what we expect of our employees. It's part of what our constituents and stakeholders are going to expect from us. And we want to do it in a way that folks can relate to, you know, that's easy for them to comply with. You know, so as part of you know, our general performance process, there's going to be an annual review process, and the rules of conduct are going to become part of that process to ensure that we're measuring success against it. In addition, I think as Natasha noted, we've trained all employees, and it's become part of the new employee orientation program. So they're trained on all of the rules of conduct when they enter FirstNet service. And so it's something that really we see as being ingrained along with the core values as part of our culture. And it's something we need to start living, you know, living every day. It's not just a document that we're going to refer to, but it's really, it's about setting the tone not only at the top, but through the middle and all the way through the organization for how we behave every day. So I think this is a really good first step and really embodies some of the work we're trying to do in implementing a robust compliance program within FirstNet.
Hey, Jason, I have a question for maybe you and Natasha, and that is at the very beginning of Natasha's comments, you know, this really originated as a result of the GAO report, and I just wanted to check to see, did we check in with them to see if what we've done is going to meet their expectations?
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually I'll make one correction because I think it's an important distinction, and actually, and I think Natasha noted this, is we kind of initiated the concept of a rules of conduct long before the GAO had ever come into FirstNet. This was something that we always thought was important to develop, something that was specific to FirstNet where we could really embody our own culture. Now, you know, as a general matter, without a rules of conduct, we're already subject to all of the various rules and statutes that are identified there. And so really what this does, it kind of brings them all together in a way that makes them easily digestible. So then when the GAO came in, we had several discussions with them about our intent to do this. And I think we really gave them the idea to push this forward. And they thought that this was an important step for us to complete. So we have followed back up with them on our action plan and how we intended to do this and implement our steps. And we did talk to them at length when they were performing their audit about kind of the expectations. I don't know if they've actually seen the final document, but I'm fully confident that what we have done is very consistent with their expectations and our discussions with them.
Great. Well, I think that's an important step. Like you said, you know, this was maybe a little more informal than I think maybe people are used to, and so we really formalized what we were doing to begin with. I just want to make sure that Donna, I'm sure you'll see that you get the proper documentation from the board members on the rules.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions on this particular topic? Great, thank you, Natasha, very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the presentation. Moving on, we're going to have an administrative and IT update. I know the team has been working incredibly, quite frankly, for the last year to get our facilities and our IT in sync. And I believe later today, Mike and TJ are going to, along with the rest of the staff, going to spend some time going through the new facility. And I think it's important to get an update on what's happening on administration and IT. So Frank Freeman and Jim Glynn, you're up.
Thank you, Sue. It's always very hard to follow Natasha Coates when she briefs because she's such a professional and polished briefer. You know, me, I normally follow the Governor Douglas humorous improvisation. You know, that technique is a much better technique, so that's what I normally follow. But thank you, board members, for allowing me to give you a quick administrative update. I'd like to start off my brief where we always start off, our number one priority, which is hiring people and the FirstNet staffing. We took a journey about beginning in March of this year to really laser focus on bringing the timelines down on bringing these highly qualified candidates that we need on board to FirstNet. I had some long partnering sessions with the Department of Commerce, in particular Kevin Mahoney, who's the director of the Office of Human Resources Management, and with some of my counterparts at NTIA, in particular Lynn Bechtel, who's the CFO and heads their administrative functions. Together we went step by step through all processes, and we were able to eliminate a lot of processes that we thought were redundant and removed review steps that we felt really didn't give us the value versus the time that it took to go through the review processes. And we've seen just from those process improvement steps, significant improvements in the timelines of hiring individuals. In the beginning, we were noticing that on average, our hiring was taking about 170 days. With the partnering that I did with DOC and NTIA, we're now seeing those hiring actions down to about 130 days. And in more recent actions, I'm seeing them getting down to about 100 days. So we're making significant improvement on that. Another thing that we did was we and my staff really focused and worked with the HR specialists at the tactical level in following each hiring action through each step of the hiring process. In doing that, we found out that you know, there was a better way to optimize the workload of each hiring specialist so that we can keep packages flowing. And we identified choke points in the process, and once we found those choke points, I was able to bring the sledgehammer to them to break up those choke points. And another thing that we did was worked with the Office of Human Resources Management to get us more staff to align us with the actual workload that we knew we were bringing down the pipe. So we got some additional contractors, they're hiring some additional civilians, and we also established an agreement with OPM to do some fee-based classification and staffing, and those items helped us out also. So if you remember, last June, I came to y'all and I briefed to y'all what we said were 62 critical positions that we needed to get hired before the end of the year. At that time, we had 26 in the final hiring stage, 15 were currently being advertised, and 21 were still in the pre-recruitment phase. As of 9/21, we now have we have 54 positions in the final hiring stage, and out of those 54 positions, 46 of them we already have brought on board or have entrance on duty dates. About 3 or 4 of them, we have selections made. We're just going through the security process and the onboarding process to bring them on board. And then we have another 5 that the hiring officials are conducting final interviews with. And you're probably asking me, well, that doesn't add up to 62. Well, there were 2 other positions. I saw you raising your brow, Governor, so I said, let me clarify that.
Finance Committee monitors all numbers.
So there were two positions that the management felt that needed to be reclassified, and so they pushed those positions to FY16. The other 6 positions, we actually went through the hiring process with them, and we were not able to bring someone on board either because there was no selection made. The hiring manager did not feel they had a high enough quality candidate to make a selection, or we did make a selection, and then in the negotiation with the employee, we couldn't agree to terms to bring them on board. So that rounds out the 62.
Frank, a comment for you and the executive team. I know I'm not the only one that sits on this board that appreciates getting it right rather than getting it fast. We want it right and fast, but we don't want to have to pick between the two of them. So I appreciate you make sure that we have the highest standards in who we're hiring. Quality attracts quality, and the kind of organization we need to build needs the highest quality people we can attract. So I'm glad you just don't take them at the end if it's not right.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Yes, we encourage our hiring managers that if you did not find that qualified candidate in your pool, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's rewrite the position description and the job vacancy to see, was there something that we didn't do that attracted the right candidate? Let's use some other avenues, like let's go beat the bushes first. Find those candidates first, and then when we advertise, we can steer them to the advertisement to make sure we have those qualified candidates that we want. So yes, that's a good point. And on top of that, we're going to bring on some additional resources in FY16 to help us develop that recruitment stage, those very formal recruitment process, so that we can try to identify those candidates and then steer them to the job vacancies as they become available. So that is a very good point.
One other note on the ones that we didn't necessarily get in the 6 there as well. The majority of that is typically where you get down to either you lose a candidate because they have an outside offer for more money, or in some cases they've taken an offer that has come through quicker. And so those are the 2 things that we're certainly up against there. And some of that we can fix, and some of that we can't. But typically it's you're going for a competitive candidate. We see this often in some of the key technical positions and others.
And hi, Sue, this is Anise Parker. I'm just monitoring this committee. I'm not on the committee. But you answered one question as to why we lose them. In being on the government side, you made me feel a whole lot better about city hiring, because I thought we took a long time, but that's from posting to actual hiring?
No, that's from receiving the package from the hiring manager to actually bringing them on
Okay, so
board.
what is the actual process? I mean, because you develop the posting, you have to post it for a minimum period of time.
Right. So first
we have like most of our hiring at the city, we have to post for a minimum of 30 days.
Right.
So is that added on
yes,
to the?
No, that's a part of the timeline.
The whole timeline.
Right.
I was just trying to figure out what.
Right. So the hiring manager has to give us a requisition saying this is the type of person that I want. And then the HR specialist has to classify that position to say, okay, based on the job duties that you said, we think it's about this GRUP series, we think it's about this grade, and they work back and forth with the hiring manager to get that agreement. Then the job is posted, it goes for that posting, then it comes back, the HR specialist has to review all the candidates that applied to make sure they have minimal qualifications, and then sometimes we turn it over to a subject matter expert who further refines the list, pass those lists to the hiring managers, then they conduct the interviews, make their selection. Once they make their selection, those people, if they didn't have a clearance, they're coming in from the private sector, they got to get their clearance process, all of that goes through, and then we bring them on board. So that 100 days includes that entire process.
Okay, now I feel even better about my hiring process at the city, but I assume then, though, that once these positions are established and they have to be refilled, the hiring is much compressed.
Right,
You don't have to go
because
through
a
all
lot
the
of times,
first half of
right,
that.
because a lot of times we've already had, when we already advertise the position, then the reclassification in that part is a lot quicker. Right, so,
Thank you.
okay. So in FY16.
Frank, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's Kevin McGinnis, Sue. And while I'm not on this committee either, I feel compelled to add that I have been involved in tangentially in like 4 hirings in recent times, and not at any one point did I feel it necessary to say, well, you know, it's a federal process, because the candidates were content with the process. So good going.
Thank you. That's great feedback. So in FY16, we're going to continue with the process of bringing in those qualified candidates. One thing that our fearless leader is going to do is he's going to take a look at each department and have us re-verify the positions that we have and the positions that we need going forward to make sure that they're in line with our organizational goals and what deliverables we have to do in FY16. So that will begin very shortly. And then from the positions that we have projected, we're going to expand on doing what we've always advertised as FirstNet's top priorities, which was getting the acquisition out and doing our consultation activities. So we have key leadership positions that we need to fill. We still have to do our chief technical officer, our chief counsel, chief financial officer, deputy position. Those top leadership positions we still need to fill in. There's a lot of consultation expertise that still needs to be rounded out, and regional outreach experience that we'll need to be hiring in the future. Our CTO buddies, Jeff Bratch and them, they have a lot of engineering and technical specialties that they still need in a variety of their fields of application, devices, standards, core. So we'll be working with them to try to bring those people on board. And then in my own shop, I still have some vacancies in the HR arena that we're trying to fill and bring on board in the early parts of 2016. So that's the challenge we have ahead in 2016, but we feel that we're definitely in a better position with all the work we did in 15 to streamline the process to make that go a lot easier. So let me just switch gears real quick to talk about our headquarters update. As y'all know, on August 31st, we moved into our new space. Woohoo! I was very happy about that. I'm sorry, that was my Air Force.
For the minutes, how do you spell that?
WHOO. So we're very happy about that. We think we have a very open and collaborative space, and we're looking forward to showing everybody at the open house today of a lot of the very innovative ways we put that space together. There's really, one thing you'll see, that there's no unused space in that space. If there was a space, we found something to do with it, and we're pretty proud of that. We incorporated a lot of my friend here is going to tell you all about all the new, for the people on the phone, I patted Jim on the back, all the new technologies that were incorporated into our new space, and we'll be briefing all of that soon. We do still have some additional space that we need. The space in our main area houses 119 people, so we will be adding additional space in the near future to accommodate expansion in our FY16 hires. Do I have any questions?
Hey Frank, this is Sue. Going back to the HR, I really appreciate all the work that I know you, TJ, Steve Fletcher probably needs to be mentioned as well, working with NTIA and Department of Commerce, the work that you've done. But I think it's important to mention that there still is a lot of manual processing of the HR process, a lot of walking around of documents, and I think we need to continue to press on making that a more streamlined, more automated process versus the kind of handling that I know is required. So you guys do an incredible job, but it's still, I think, too labor intensive. And TJ, I don't know if you want to comment on it, but I still think there's work to be done here.
Oh, no doubt there's still room for improvement, and I think that we've taken the low-hanging fruit, and we've really done a much better job of having the team manage where all the processes are each day, and I think that's how we received the improved results to date. I think automation, and I also think making sure that we have control of certain parts of the process so that we can keep things moving is critical, and I know we have cooperation from the department and others to work together on that, and I think that will make more improvements in FY16.
Yeah, and I just have to comment, I don't know who's going to testify at the next hearing, but I don't know that the members are going to be all that satisfied with, even the numbers that we have today. So just to comment on that. I think we've tried to streamline it, but there's only so much that's going to be done.
No, I agree.
Thanks for everything you've done in your team, and again, I want to mention, I know Steve Fletcher's been involved with you on that, so I appreciate his support. Jim, you've been very active in this new space and making us come into the current century on communications. Why don't you give us an update on that?
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, committee members. I'll try to provide a very brief update and warn you on the front end, my presentation style is a little different, a little less enthusiastic than Frank's, but, as you would expect from somebody in the technology realm, I suppose. What I wanted to do is remind everyone of kind of our overarching objective here that kind of overlays everything we're doing in our IT infrastructure and the progress and the work we've done to date. If I could describe it very briefly in a sentence, it's to provide collaboration anytime, anywhere. It's really to build the capabilities across our workforce that enables them to do their jobs most effectively. And done correctly, IT is nothing more than a catalyst to that end and that objective. So with that and the collaboration, I'm looking to do that in the realm of unified communications, providing integration of on-premise and off-premise or cloud-based services across our workforce, providing mobile capabilities anywhere that it's needed, providing stability through connectivity that's redundant, that allows us failover capabilities in crisis times, and allows us to effectively collaborate, again, without regard to where you are. To do that, you have to integrate your back office suite of products. You have to take your mobility suite of products, put those together, and hopefully bring in all of the very nice audio video capabilities, some of which you'll see when we go upstairs today. Predominantly, we've been focused in the recent past here with bringing up the Reston space, as Frank described, and we're about to move into Boulder to try to upgrade Boulder, and we'll build some technologies there that I'll share on this next slide. So kind of taking you through this, I wanted to step back and kind of give you the where we were to where we are to where we're going view of this. When we first moved into this space here in Reston, we were leveraging DOI's network. So literally we just came in, they gave us the network to use, gave us some phone sets to use, and we took what we had and made do. From that, you know, in Boulder, we have some DSL lines out there, been doing most everything we're doing off the DSL lines there. And we've been fully leveraging and utilizing what the Department of Commerce and NTIA information technology has made available to and for us. So from that was the foundation from which to start. First of all, I should say we're very appreciative of all the support we've received, or I've received personally, from the IT organizations, both in the Department of Commerce and in NTIA. Today, what we've done is we've moved off of the DOI network here, so we've moved to our own commercial network, connected that up with a redundant path. In case we fail on one side, we can go to the other. We get access via that connectivity between Reston and Boulder. We will have that set up via the backbone that DOC has, so we don't want to build a separate backbone. We've put network into Boulder as well, and then we've built a data center components, and we built our data center components in the Department of Commerce downtown. So we're connected from here to downtown in the Hardin Data Center, and we're connected from Boulder to downtown in the Hardin Data Center. That's the long-term plan. Boulder's still got a little work to do, so we'll talk about that in a minute. We've built wireless capabilities here in the space. We do have access points, so you can actually, I can take my laptop out of its workstation, walk anywhere in our space upstairs, and it stays connected. I can use ClickShare capabilities to do all of our presentations wirelessly, and we're working on getting all the audio video capabilities interconnected today. We also installed a new phone system, so if I kind of switch gears a minute and talk about the network side of things, we went from a circuit-based network in our spaces upstairs over to a voice over IP. So we have IP-based phones. We're putting IP-based phones. We've already tested those in Boulder, so I can dial Jeff Bratcher's extension in Boulder, for instance, and just dial 4 digits and connect with him. I don't have to dial a 10-digit phone number. It's just like he's sitting down the corridor from me. So that's the way technology, in my opinion, is supposed to work. It's supposed to be easy for the users, and if we do our jobs effectively, you don't know who I am, which is the way it's supposed to work. So where are we going and what are we doing? In the coming months, we're going to stand up, and I should mention, we've already stood up the initial implementation of our CRM. We did that this past week. Amanda Hilliard's user advocacy team, the outreach team, has already started building contacts in it. They're doing train the trainer this week, I believe. They're finishing that up, and we should be ready for our next phases of that. So we do have some additional phases to do there, but we do have it stood up and ready to go. And we've got the foundational premise, working with our partners at NTIA, done to move to the cloud service in the Office 365 suite of products. So we'll move our mail and all of our applications, many of those into the cloud, bridging our on-prem, again, with our cloud service, which is the overarching objective here. So tomorrow I've described some of what we're going to do. We're going to finish out the voice over IP in Boulder, get that fully deployed. I intend to do that in October. It could bleed into November depending on any technical issues that tend to arise that you don't know about until they show up, hence this morning. We will take our VTC and wireless presentation components. We're going to build those out again in Boulder. I want to be able to interconnect Boulder very directly. We have some of that connectivity in place today, but it still has work to be done there to get it completely out there. We're going to fully, as I said, implement our CRM implementation, and then we'll be migrating all of our email and application products that today NTIA supports us on. We'll be moving that over to our own domain. So that's in the coming months, and we look forward to the challenge.
Jim, a quick question. I know we have little to no wireless service in this building. I know this isn't our building, but it's a problem. And is that on anybody's horizon?
It's on my radar, and I'm glad you asked that because I should have mentioned it. What we're doing, we've actually the building's been trying to get it since, from my understanding, I've been told 12 years. So that's a long time. If you pull out your cell phone right now, not going to work. In our space, though, we will have that. We have already got the equipment installed. We've got the cabling done. We've got the antennas on the roof. Believe it or not, in a federal space, we actually had to have the building is owned by GSA, and GSA had to work with the provider, and a lease had to be negotiated. They had to do testing on emissions and all kinds of things before we could even start the process. We've been pressing that very hard in the new space, and my expectation is before the end of this month, we will have wireless services for LTE and cell phone service in our space here in Reston.
Thank you very much. It was going to boil down to asking Jeff Bratcher to hook onto that cow in Boulder and drag that thing out here.
And I'd like to, what Jim and Frank's teams did, we talked earlier about core values, and one of those being accountability and reliability. And they said, about the second day I was here, that we were going to move in on August 31st, and when we move, everything will work, and your computers will work and everything. And they worked tirelessly, their teams, nights and weekends, and they stood that area up quickly, and we look really excited to show off the technology. It is enabling a lot of breakout sessions. It's not unusual to walk down the halls and clusters of 3 or 4 or 5. Sometimes I think there was 10 people stuffed in a 5-person room working on the project. So it's a great foundation, but it was an unbelievable amount of work, and our leaders epitomized, they took the responsibility. They drew a line in the sand saying, we will be done, we will move in, and everything will work. And so much kudos to their teams and their leadership on it. It really resonated with the organization too.
Well, that's great. I saw the space before people moved in, and it was terrific. I'm sorry I won't be there for the ribbon cutting today, but I'm sure the board will enjoy seeing the space. And Frank and Jim, thanks for doing everything you've done. I know it was a long journey to get there, but it was terrific. So thanks for that, and thanks for bringing us into the current century on communication, since that's kind of our mission for the people we're serving. So I think that's important to be able to use the technology ourselves. Appreciate it. Any other comments, observations from the board, questions? Great. Next up, we have a financial update from Kim Farrington, who is our Chief Financial Officer. And so, Kim, if you could walk us through some of the summary of what's happening on the financial side, we'd appreciate it. The floor is yours.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and let me begin by wishing you a happy new fiscal year. What we're going to talk about today during our finance review is just take a look back at fiscal year 15, both the budget review and the milestones. Then we're going to talk briefly about fiscal year 16 budget and milestones. And we're actually going to save the long-term forecast for a later discussion today, but I will end with an update on our strategic planning process that we're undergoing. So to begin with the fiscal year 15 obligations budget, we actually, if you look at this slide, we actually represent the year-to-date obligations through August 31st by the blue line, and we represent the obligations forecast for FY15 with the red bar. The green bar represents the total FY15 obligations budget. And as you can see, we did pretty well up through August 31st. We have utilized 85% of our total obligations, again, as of August 31st. We've utilized about 72 million of the 86 million that was budgeted. The good news is we are looking forward to actually utilizing close to 100% of our total obligations budget for fiscal year 15. Taking a look at the fiscal year 15 expense budget, we actually have the same bars represented as on the obligations budget. And we actually didn't do as great as we did with the obligations, but the good news is our expenses can actually carry forward into this next fiscal year. For fiscal year 15, as of August 31st, we have actually expended only about 53% of our expenses as compared to budget. That's predominantly due to two items. First, we had anticipated bringing on additional staff, and when we realized the reality of our staffing timeline, that actually resulted in us bringing staff on later than we anticipated, so we have that lag. We also had a lag in the procurement expenses. Some of the procurements that we actually had planned to obligate and award earlier in the fiscal year happened later in the fiscal year. So subsequently, those expenses related to those awards are coming in later in the fiscal year than we had originally anticipated. We are at about 89% of our expense forecast, but we do only anticipate exhausting around 56% of our total expense budget. And we have taken FY15 as a lessons learned, and we will utilize those lessons as we move forward into FY16. You may ask, what did the 15 fiscal year money buy for us? And what you see here is our milestone chart, and it actually demonstrates what our milestones were and how well we did at achieving those milestones. The acquisition milestones are represented with the green. The consultation work stream milestones are represented in the red-orange. And the corporate services, those are our administrative functions, are represented in the blue. And as you can see, we have a lot of check marks up there. Those are items that we actually completed during this last fiscal year. They including incorporating and doing analysis for our RFI and our statement of objectives, developing the public notices, actually performing NEPA assessments. In consultation, you can see the number of consultations and stakeholder engagements that we completed, as well as all the meetings we held and data collection activities we performed during the fiscal year. The corporate services milestones were pretty much on track throughout the fiscal year. We did have some delay, but we were able to accomplish what we had planned in this fiscal year, as is represented by the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Now I will briefly move you into the fiscal year 16 budget. As you probably know, the Finance Committee actually approved the FY16 budget that you see here on August 7th, and the full board actually approved the budget on August 17th. This actually is our budget of $126 million, and we have broken this budget down by quarter and also by work stream: the corporate services work stream, the consultation work stream, and the acquisition work stream. This obligations budget does include some funding for spectrum relocation grants that we plan to award this fiscal year, and those will just help facilitate the spectrum relocation to ensure that the unencumbered spectrum is available for the National Public Safety Broadband Network. Moving on to the FY16 budget expenses. We actually have, this also was approved by the board, and as you can see, we broke this down also by the 3 different work streams. This too actually incorporates the expenses that we anticipate from those spectrum relocation grants. So you will see a bit of a spike towards the end of the fiscal year, and that's what those are representing. Our expense budget is $99 million, with about 11% going to the corporate services work stream, 29% going to consultation, and about 60% going to acquisition. I expect that you would ask, what is this budget buying us? Well, as you can see here, we have a lot of milestones and plans for FY16. We do have a very aggressive schedule. Focusing on acquisition, we are doing, we'll complete our final interpretations. We will be publishing draft PEISs, Program Environmental Impact Studies, and we will be constructing the lab that Jeff will talk about later. And the key milestone with the star is our RFP release, which we do anticipate coming out December 31st of this year. For consultation, we anticipate that we are going to be developing the state-specific plans and working on additional consultations and just reviewing the federal and state data submissions. Lastly, what I will leave you with is just an update looking further beyond FY16. One thing that we have initiated recently is developing a 5-year strategic plan for FirstNet. We did have a strategic plan for fiscal year 15. We're expanding this to a 5-year plan to extend past the roadmap that you have previously seen. As part of this strategic plan update, we are not only developing the strategic goals and the objectives, but we're actually going to create performance targets and key performance indicators for each of those strategic goals and objectives. And of course, we will be measuring against those targets on an annual basis. We do plan on, after we complete the plan, we will present it to you at a later board meeting. So we will be anxious to share with you what we have planned for the next 5 years. So that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
This is Jim. Let me just thank you, Kim, for, first of all, coming to us on loan or detail, whatever the operative noun is, from OPM to provide leadership to our finance operation. And thanks for bringing some clarity to a process that's been challenging for the board because of our startup status and certain level of imprecision and as we've developed budgets over the last couple of years. So I think we're getting to where we want to be, and we appreciate your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Any other questions from the board members about the plan? You know, Kim, I'd just like to thank you and the rest of the team, and Jim and obviously Tim for getting us a plan before the fiscal year. I think that was quite a milestone. And in Tim's absence, I'll just say that, you know, the whole focus of the committee and the board has been to make sure the FirstNet has the resources to accomplish its objectives. It's, you know, it's not just a budget for budget's sake. It's really tied to outcomes and deliverables, and that's really how we're, you know, that's how we're budgeting. That's how we're thinking about the financial plan. So I think the plan for this year is a good one, and obviously we'll monitor it as it goes along. But in Tim's absence, I just feel it was necessary to make that comment, because that's really been the philosophy of the Finance Committee since its inception. Hearing no other comments, and Jeff, I know you will let me know if anybody there is wanting to say anything. With the financial update and the administration items done, I think Uzama and Jason are going to explain the logistics of the rest of the meeting, which will be a little bit different than we've done in the past. So I don't know if Uzama, you or Jason want to take the next portion.
I'm here, Sue. So for everyone that's listening online and the folks in the room, just wanted to be clear on what's going to be taking place now. As most of you are aware, the board will close meetings when dealing with legal matters, financial matters, and other matters such as procurement-sensitive information. So right now, we are going to be breaking into closed session after the board votes to close the session. The substance of this meeting has already taken place at this point, so I want to be clear that when we go into closed session, we're not going to be coming back to do readouts. The readouts will be taking place tomorrow. So I just want to give you a better sense of what the day will be like. So really, if you're looking for when we're going to be coming back and providing more public information, it really will be at 1 o'clock when we start the next committee meeting. So we're going to break now.
But to be clear, we're not going to read out from the closed session. We'll be coming back to do technology and outreach, correct?
That's absolutely right. So we're gonna do a closed session now. We're gonna take a break between meetings, and then following that, we will start up with another meeting, another substantive meeting at 1 p.m.
Great.
And
Hey,
so.
do you want to add anything at this point?
Thanks, Sue. No, I mean, I think that really encapsulates it. I mean, what we're trying to do is be as efficient as we can, and as everyone knows, we're in a very critical time in FirstNet's operations, and with the anticipation of the RFP coming up, we're going to be dealing with some sensitive attorney-client privilege and source selection-sensitive information that we need to take to closed session. As always, we want to be as transparent as possible, and when we reconvene as a full board tomorrow, we will have some readouts and discussions about the outcomes of those meetings.
Great. Thanks for that additional information. With that, any questions from the board on the process? And if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session.
Madam Chair, Jeff Johnson, I'll make the motion, and then right before we go into executive session, Madam Chair, I'd like Uzama to clarify who remains in the room, and
Okay.
but you have a motion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? The motion carries, and so we are adjourned. So, Jeff, your comment was clarified.
Okay, so with the vote, we are going to move, we're going to change rooms, and so the folks that are going to be in the room are members of the board and the executive staff, and we're going to be heading over there right now.
And Mike, who on the executive team do you want to end the session?
At this point, we're just going to have, I'm going to ask Jason and TJ to join me, and then Mr. Strickling. If we need any other assistance from the rest of the team, we'll go out and retrieve them and bring them in for their subject matter expertise.
Okay, great. So, Chief Johnson, does that clarify?
It does, Madam Chair. Thank you.